Today on Locked On Canadiens, the Habs lose again, but is that the full story?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 1179 of Locked On Canadiens. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. Ian, the Habs lost again.
They did. But if you're looking for a moral victory, I feel like, and we might, if you're online and you're looking around at what people are feeling, it's not going to be the vibe that you get from this show, because I think we're feeling kind of positive about that game, believe it or not. So
yeah, I think that's kind of our brand is trying to look for positivity where we can, particularly when it comes to this team. And I think, okay, so, you've got that loss, you've got that stat line, but what I want to say is all is not what it seems to be on the Canadiens front, because there were measures of improvement. Now, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I've become kind of an inventor of sorts, and I've invented a new stat, and that stat is Boisvetrix. And essentially, it applies to the Montreal Canadiens, and it is how my co-host tracks the number of giveaways per game, the number of turnovers per game. So every day now, we're going to have to go through the stat and talk about it, but there's some good news on that front, right, Ian?
yeah. So the 3 games leading into this one, the Canadiens had over 20 giveaways, which is bad. That's a terrible number to be hitting. Only 11 in this one against the Devils, and the Devils also had 11. So they were pretty close in that sort of metric. I think the problem is that the ones that the Canadiens give away just seem to be of really high danger. Maybe that's where the Boisvetrix comes from. Maybe that's we qualify them as high danger giveaways instead of just giveaways as a full stat. I wonder if anybody's doing that. If someone knows about that, let us know, because I feel like that would define this Montreal Canadiens team to a T. Is giveaways from their own, below their own goal line, even, right? Like we're seeing them get pressured along the goal line, and they just always seem to give up the puck.
Yeah. Or take an ill-advised penalty. So I do want to talk about that a little bit, because it is something where it's kind of like if somebody has an average shooting percentage, the more shots they direct at the net, at some point they're going to go in, right? So this is kind of the opposite of that, is that the more turnovers they do, the more chances that it's going to result in a high danger chance, if not a goal against, right? So I think, the name of the game is to just reduce turnovers in general, and not like there's no such thing. There is sometimes such a thing as a good penalty. There's no such thing as a good turnover, I don't think.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And, it's funny. I think that the Canadiens, at least in this game, 2 of the goals they gave up were they had a defenseman below the goal line with the puck, or someone on their team below the goal line with the puck. And the Devils would send 2 forecheckers after one guy. They would outnumber him, they would outman him, they would get the puck away from him, they would set somebody up in the middle of the ice, and they would score. The first goal of the game was like that. Actually, I think it was the second goal of the game that was like that, where Gouli got doubled on the wall. The same thing happened when Hudson and Savard got doubled along the wall. They lost the puck battle. It spit out into the center of the ice. So those are situations where I think if they're executing their defensive structure or system correctly, we stop seeing those, because if they're getting outmanned down low, it means that they're not truly playing zone, and they're not trying to create those odd man situations down low. In fact, the Devils did that to a T on their forecheck. They came in and they sent 2 guys in, which if the Canadiens could find a way to get that puck out and up the ice, they'd be in better shape, because they'd have 2 Devils behind the play. They'd have a chance for an odd man rush the other way. So it's just, they're coming along. The pieces are coming along. I'm far more positive about this game and the previous game against Calgary. The Calgary one less so, because the Flames stink.
Yeah.
But the Devils are a good team, and Montreal was right there with them. They did not quit. They got down 2-0, and it wasn't game over like we've seen in the past, which is a huge step forward, and a step forward because Alex Newhook finally got off the schneid and scored. One was just an incredible individual effort, which we need to see from him every once in a while. He has one of those, you know what, I'll do it myself shifts where he just decides to be the only player on the ice. What did you think of Newhook's game outside of, the early on, he was kind of responsible for the first Devils goal. What did you think of his game after that?
So, I wanted to talk a little bit about him because he didn't have a great game to begin with, right? But not only that, I saw so many comments talking about how he's been terrible all season. And I don't think that that's the case. I think that he's struggling with the position he's being put in. And that's the way that you can describe a lot of these players. So I did think that he was able to get it together. I'm not ready to call it like a turnaround just yet. But I think that it is a little bit overblown, but he didn't have a good game, right? I'm not going to say he didn't have a good game, but I thought he's trying to put the pieces together. He's trying to come back from that. But just before we go a little bit further, I did want to, as you were talking about the New Jersey Devils and like the two, those odd man situations they create, in my head, I was like, it's almost as if being bold and aggressive results in positive outcomes, right? That's something I want the Canadiens to do, right? And I don't think that Sheldon Keefe is that great a coach. He's definitely an experienced coach, but particularly experienced with losing.
He got out-coached by Dom Ducharme. He's not infallible, right?
Yes.
It's entirely likely that anyone can beat this coach.
Right. So, but like that's something where like it feels to me that it's a fundamental thing that the Canadiens aren't doing. They're not being aggressive. And when you were talking about those turnovers, like the metric that we've now created on this show, I would like a T-shirt with Bovetrix on it, please. I want to point out that like why are they doing that? It's because they're getting pressured. It's because instead of being aggressive, they are the ones that are bearing the brunt of the other team's boldness. And that's something that the Canadiens don't just have to be careful about. It's something that they have to learn. But back to Newhook. We went off on a whole tangent. Sorry, this is Locked On Canadiens. This is the experience that Ian has to have every single day working with me, with my ADHD. But we're okay. Let's go back to Newhook. So I thought he recovered okay, but I'm not ready to say that he's about to mount a comeback.
Yeah, I want to see it again. Right. I want to see him put this together again. And it looks like that confidence was growing with him. After the second goal he scored, he looked untouchable, which is really, really great news for the Canadiens, who are desperately looking for someone to step up on that second line, right? They're looking or within that top six, I should say. If he can be that guy, this team is going to start stringing some wins together. But right now, because the top line had I think they were terrible. I hate saying it about those guys.
But
they're struggling. I thought that was one of the worst games I've seen Nick Suzuki play in a long time. And again, these are players I love and players I think are great. And that's why the standard, the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin, he says the standard is the standard, right? That's the standard is the standard for that line. We expect greatness out of them. So when they take a step back, we kind of notice it.
And it makes it seem like they're worse than they are.
Right. And if Newhook can take that step, like we saw late in the third, where that line was out there and it wasn't Doc up there, it was Newhook on that line. So it looks like Marty's trying to ride a hot hand of sorts. One thing I did want to mention before we move on is before the game started, right as TSN opened their broadcast, they were showing the inside of the Canadiens dressing room. They were showing the players getting ready. Juraj Slafkovsky had a brace on his left knee. I don't know if they were supposed to show that, but we saw it, and it's concerning. It's concerning that this is happening and that we don't know what's going on. I'm sure Chantal Maccabee at the Canadiens is not too thrilled that that hit the airwaves, but we did see it. We can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
It's getting some emails. But that was one thing is too, because it's like, we keep talking about him as if he has an upper body injury, and it's like there's a lower one. What are we,
It's like Kirby Doc from 2 years ago, where like he got trench foot and we were just like, oh yeah, that's totally normal for a player to get that.
Absolutely. So it was a difficult time for the first line, but players like Cole Caulfield, players like Nick Suzuki, they're going to get it together, right? Like Nick Suzuki is going to be the first person who says he's struggling, and he is struggling. And it's not just because he didn't have a decent game this game. It's more than once we've said he needs to be better, right? And that's because the standard and the expectation we have for him is so high. So if he's playing average, it looks like he sucks. And we have a lot of faith in Nick Suzuki. We think he can turn it around, and we have a lot of faith in him actually taking accountability and doing that. Like that's what leadership is. And we do have faith in him. But what we wanted to talk about was a really, really, you're talking about riding the hot hand, a player who's on a hot streak, and also a player who's a little bit of a downward spiral. Can he turn it around? That's coming up in just a moment. Guys, ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? It's time you stop worrying about your performance and get Hims, so you can feel confident knowing you can get hard and stay hard whenever you're in the mood. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/LOCKEDON for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. I love going to a live event, whether it is a hockey game, it is a concert, it is a show, it is a comedy show, all kinds of live events. But sometimes it's really hard to find tickets. Not anymore, because now I know about Game Time. Game Time is the destination for you to be able to find tickets and get amazing deals on ticket prices, even up to the last minute. One of my favorite things about Game Time is that you can toggle a feature where you don't get surprise fees at the checkout, right? Like everybody hates those surprise hidden fees. You're not going to get that with Game Time. You can also see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what you're getting into. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Do we want to talk about the good or the bad first?
Let's do the bad first so we can go into the next segment feeling good about ourselves. That would be cool.
All right. Well, the Habs community is in for a treat because today, for one time only, we're agreeing with them on Mike Matheson. I think he had a really rough game. And, you can see in the sidebar, I've referenced the good, the bad, and the slightly ugly. The slightly ugly was a penalty he took at the end of that game. That really, really bothered me. But it seems to be kind of the theme of his game tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he just didn't have it. And when he plays as much as he does, when he doesn't have it, it means he doesn't have it a lot, which sounds stupid, but it's probably the least stupid thing I've said on this show in a long time. Look, we are Mike Matheson defenders here. You're not going to catch us being the ones who are dogging him every game. I like the player. I like the guy. I think he's really valuable to this team. And his value to this team shows whether he is having a great dominant night and he's leading the Canadiens to a win, or he's coughing the puck up at the blue line in front of an empty net again. He's done that before. It has happened before where he overhandles the puck at the blue line with an empty net. And like the last time it happened, Hudson tried to cover for him. It didn't work. This time he gets a pass from Hudson. He tries to turn to his left and then seems shocked that Jack Hughes is pressuring him, even though he knows he's in a one-on-one with an empty net behind him. I don't think that this is a trend for Mike Matheson. He typically has like a bad game and then he's fine. So, I think I look, bad game. He'll be the first to admit it was a bad game. He'll shake it off. They need him. They need him on Saturday against Toronto. They cannot afford to not have him be at his top game.
Right. And so this is a thing that I want to say about Mike Matheson is that he is inconsistent. It's true. And when he does have a bad game, it is a really rough game. Like that is something every single Penguins fan could tell us when the Canadiens first traded for him. When he has a bad game, everyone is going to think it's bad. But the thing is, he always goes back to playing better. And that's the narrative that I want to break here in Montreal, is that people just look at those bad games and think that that is what he's doing night in and night out. And he's not. And so, you know, for me, like we had this conversation like a few games ago where like Mike Matheson was not good. And then he picked it up and he fixed it, right? So I feel like there's just like we need a new metric for the Mike Matheson cycle where every like X number of games we have the same conversation.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth pointing out that, like, you know, as a whole, the team did a lot better. So like if he was just maybe a little bit better, like they maybe the stat line is different, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and it's not to blame a player. I don't want to do that because there's a lot of talk about Montembeault and his current record, but
no, and Montembeault was great in this game. I mean, every goal he gave up, he had no shot on, or the Canadiens made some catastrophic dumb mistake in front of him.
Yeah, exactly.
And he made several game-saving saves in this one. So Montembeault, we didn't talk about him in the first bracket. He was excellent. And as was, again, Brendan Gallagher, which, you know, I think
that's
I said on the show. Yeah, that's the good for sure. I think I said this earlier on this season. He had a 2-goal game and they ended up losing. And I remember being so mad that they lost a game in 2024 in which Gallagher had 2 goals. Like that should be illegal. If you're getting 2 goals out of him, like at that point we were thinking like if you get 1 goal out of him, you should be winning these games. He's on a 35 goal pace. He's not going to hit that. But if he scores 20 something, it's a stellar season for that player, considering the role he plays, right? Like, how are you feeling about the like, I don't want to say late stage Brendan Gallagher experience, but it sort of feels like that, right? He's completely reinvented himself as a player.
He's currently the Canadian second leading goal scorer, I believe.
Which would be great if it wasn't so sad.
Yeah, exactly. But I do love how, like, you know, you were bad about it and then they did it again, you know?
Yeah.
They lost again. He seems to have found his spot. I think that there has always been a tendency for Brendan Gallagher to do too much. That was great when he was a late round success story for the Montreal Canadiens. That was great when he was instrumental in a lot of those playoff runs. When you turn around and this guy is on, you know, he's in the twilight of his career. Sorry, Brendan Gallagher. It is true, though. He's getting paid this much money. When you're trying to do too much, you're doing the wrong thing, right? There's a point at which that becomes detrimental to you. Usually it's really early in a player's career or really late in a player's career. It's like everything just goes wrong when you're not fitting in your role, you know, or you're not accepting that that's your role. So now that he has accepted his role and hopefully, knocking on wood, you know, has recovered from injuries, he's one of the most often injured players on this team. Now that he's back in that spot and he's doing really well, like, I think that it just goes to show, right? Like every time a player accepts his limitations, understands what's needed from him, the narratives that we had about them last year or last month or last week, we're turning that around and praising them, right? It's not just Brendan Gallagher, but he does seem to have found the fountain of youth. He seems to be really excited to be where he is. And I think it's just like you kind of understand at some point you can't be the one guy who does everything.
Yeah.
And it's true that he has been in the past. It's true that he has had to be in the past, but he doesn't have to be that anymore. So for him to like settle in to his potential, his role, he's achieving the potential that he should at this age.
Yeah. And yes, his contract's too much. I do not care. I do not care about how much he gets paid. It does not matter to this.
I think he's getting paid for the injuries.
Yes, he's getting that contract was a here's what you did for me instead of here's what you're going to do for me kind of deal. And he earned that, if we're being quite honest. He damaged his body a lot to get himself to that point. I used to joke that the old version of Gallagher, or the older version of Gallagher, was he would make really great plays, he'd get himself into position, and then his stick would turn into a wet mop. And there was just nothing he could do with it. That seems to have gone away. Like, he seems like a legitimate scoring threat when he's on the ice, which is crazy to think about in 2024, almost 2025. So very much here for the Brendan Gallagher renaissance. That's really, really good for this team. And it's good for this team that they have a vet who's dragging them through the fight. They were down in this game, and he said, "No, we're not. We're dragging ourselves out of this." It's a great player to have, a great mentality to have. If you have a team that, frankly, is going to be losing in a lot of hockey games.
Yeah. Yeah. And that he's definitely somebody that they look up to. He's definitely somebody that motivates them. And he's like an unofficial captain of this team, right? Like he's another leader of this team. And it kind of makes me think about, in that 2021 playoff run, how it was like the veterans and that kind of intangible that they brought that really like dragged the Canadiens despite Dominique Ducharme's incompetence into a Stanley Cup final. Like that's it. Like they're not replicating that. They don't have that roster, but they are, having that around you, having that in the room. Like how can you help but get better?
Yep, for sure.
All right, it is our favorite time of the week. The mailbag is coming up next, and we know you can't wait for it. You hear us talk about FanDuel a lot. That's because it is America's #1 sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the NFL with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, where you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, it is time for our mailbag and trivia. Like my two favorite things, I think, other than rumor roundup, like the mailbag and trivia are my favorite things.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have a lot of bits that are being underplayed in this market. So share the show if you enjoy these bits. It helps us get our name out there a little bit more. And thanks for telling us that you enjoy them. It means a lot to, my psyche that we're creating things that people like, because that's the goal here. Yeah. Back into our mailbag. We have very, very smart listeners. I always very much enjoy reading, their long form thoughts that we get in our email, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. We'll start with Claude Sauvé, a longtime listener and caller. He says, if one student in a class gets a failing grade, that's on one student. If the whole class is failing, that's on the teacher. I don't think Marty should be fired, but I think he needs to show improvement as a coach just as much as anybody in their third year on the job should. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Something in his approach is not landing. I have a theory. Is it possible that he expects his players to assess and dissect the game as quickly as he did as a player? If so, that might explain the hesitancy in their play and the resulting turnovers. I think he may have to realize that he is the exception rather than the rule and let each player play to their strengths rather than his. Would love to hear your theories on the subject. What are you thinking about that, Laura? There's a lot to chew on there. It's a really salient point by Claude.
And so here's my question, is that Marty's teams are underperforming. Are they underperforming in the same ways each year, right? It's true that this is his third year. It needs to be better. You need to show improvement. You need to, you can't be doing the same thing over and over again. You can't be acting like a rookie coach in your third year, because at this point you've got 2 seasons, or I guess a season and a half of experience. Well, here's my question. Are they failing in the same ways? Or are they improving certain things on a micro level? Is each person getting a tiny bit better, right? So I say that a lot, and it is a way of giving Marty grace. But I think the question we have to ask ourselves is there a problem that has not been fixed? From what I'm seeing, it feels like they fix a problem and another one kind of materializes. Like we talked about special teams for so long. And then this season, we're way happier. It's not perfect, but we're way happier with the special teams. Yeah. But now at this point, you're looking at being hemmed in the defensive zone. And I don't think that it's fair to call offense just yet. We don't know if the offense is clicking or not, because they're never getting the puck. They're constantly defending. Yep. So, for me, like that's like, is the glaring hole the same thing?
Yeah.
And if the defense sucks, which we have said that for 3 years, is it in the same way? Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good. Yeah. You're good. I think too, the concept of team defense needs to be established. Because the first goal the Devils scored on Thursday night, Slafkovsky's stick was broken, but you can see he understands the concept of what's supposed to be playing out in front of him, because he starts directing traffic. He tells Newhook to go after the guy at the point, because the puck is up high. They're supposed to be playing man. Newhook sits way too far back in the slot. The guy eats up all of that ice in front of him, and now they're in the slot in a dangerous scoring opportunity, and it's over, right? That, I don't think that that's coaching. That's execution. And I know it's execution because one of the players got it. It just happened to be the one who didn't have a stick. So, that's where we're at right now. I get the thoughts people are having about Marty. I kind of tend to agree with what Marty thinks, though, which is essentially, and he said as much and I'll paraphrase it, but he essentially said, like, if you can't play this system, maybe you shouldn't be in the National Hockey League, which for this Canadiens defense makes sense. There are a lot of young defensemen who are playing, their very first 100 games or so in the NHL. So that's definitely a point of contention there. So I get it. I get the frustration, but think long-term here. The Canadiens are thinking long-term. Marty's not going anywhere. They'll see improvements the way that they see them internally.
But I do want to say, though, I love emails like that because it really makes you, and we don't have to agree, right?
No.
You don't have to agree with us to watch the show or enjoy the show, and we don't have to agree with you to enjoy your emails. But I love having talks like this.
Yeah, it makes us think. That's why we do this, right? We enjoy doing this kind of conversation. Randy Hansen, now that the Habs have brought in Mark Bureau to teach face-off skills to the players, what specialist would you like to see hired next? Why should it be someone to teach body checking since none of these guys know how to throw a proper check? The first person that came to mind was bring in Nicholas Kronwall.
Yes.
That guy could lay the boom in a very clean way most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you bring him in to lay hits, Arbor Xhekaj becomes such a valuable, an even more valuable player than he already is. Jaden Struble, could you imagine him if he knew how to hit a hip check constantly? Like that's the kind of thing I have in mind. I love this thought from Randy. What about you?
I love it. I absolutely love it because the other thing too is that the Habs are getting criticized for being soft. I don't necessarily think they're soft. I just think that they don't know what they're doing right now. And so, the importance of throwing the body is knowing when to do it and when not to. So if you're not making good decisions anywhere on the ice, that's probably bound to be a bad decision too whenever you do choose to throw the body, right?
Yeah.
So your hits have to be well placed.
Yeah.
There's a place for it, and I love it. I love body checks. I love all kinds of aggressive play, right? I just think that it has to be in the right moment, in the right situation, and in a way that's not going to get you into trouble and that's not going to injure the other player. Just get the other player out of the game. So I love this. I was trying to think. I was going to ask, what's Alexei Emlin doing these days?
Yeah, but he's the kind of guy you don't want because he used to chase guys for hits. His first season, he was great. But then later on, you remember the overtime winner Marty St. Louis had against the Canadiens in the playoffs. Emlin is chasing a hit across the ice, and Marty St. Louis gets to walk. I still remember that. Alexei, why did you do that to us? All right, moving on. Robert Rice has a segment idea. He wants us to build our all-decade team for the the 2000s to now. So Laura and I are going to review that email, look at the rules and regulations, and we're going to make that into a segment because I really like that idea. So thanks for that, Robert. Jordan Roberts says, with the emergence of Alexis Lafreniere in his third year and now him truly finding his footing in his fourth year, when do you find it acceptable to truly compare to the game of Slafkovsky to guys like Lafreniere, Hughes, and Hischier? His forechecking skills and puck battles have been great to start, but I'd love to see him more comfortable with the puck on his stick. What are your thoughts on Juraj Slafkovsky?
I think that's the fourth season is a good, because you've got your rookie season, which for Slafkovsky's case, he didn't play a top line role, and he also was not getting top line minutes, right? Then you have his sophomore season where that was his breakout year. Now you have his injury season. Which again, I'm not trying to jinx him. It just, you can see it. And so for me, the next thing is, I think this time next year, because also the team around him will be able to, pick up what he's putting down. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not
I
going to
think
be
he's playing well right now.
Yeah.
I know the TSN broadcast kept saying he looks so frustrated. I don't see that in his game. He's getting a lot of good chances.
He made one face.
Yeah. And he's also, I love Jake Evans. He's also playing with Jake Evans as a center, right?
Yeah.
He's not getting the top lineup here.
He's not getting the top feeds.
Yeah. I think Slafkovsky is right on schedule with what he's supposed to be. Last question here from Bill Van Vagel. I was noticing down in Laval, goaltender Connor Hughes has fantastic numbers. Does he have a chance at playing with the Habs this year, or is he merely a veteran placeholder in Laval? I don't think he plays in Montreal this year unless things go catastrophically wrong. I think Dobish is the first call up if they need a goalie.
Yeah. Also, for those of you who miss Scott, we will be grilling him about Laval in a couple weeks. So that's coming up. Somebody asked where he was the other day, and I was like, "Where have you been?" What is this like? We're almost at the end of your 4th month now.
I think so. It's all right. Glad to have you back. Thanks for tuning back in. I hope you stick around.
But yes, so is that it for our mailbag questions for now?
That's it. And you have our trivia question from yesterday, and then I'll give you our new one.
I do. What is the 1 year where there was no Canadiens team in the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs?
And I didn't get it.
Yeah.
I didn't get it.
You were close, though.
I was.
You were close.
But
you mentioned a bunch of years, like in the 1970s, except for 1970 itself. And the answer is 1970. That was the first, only, and last time that there was not a single Canadian team in the NHL playoffs.
Yeah. Wow. Hope it doesn't happen again, unless, well, I guess that means like Ottawa and Toronto also missed, which would be kind of funny. Anyway, my question, speaking of Toronto, in 1998-99, former Montreal Canadian and Toronto Maple Leaf Thomas Kaberle finished 15th in Calder voting. Who won the Calder Trophy that year as Rookie of the Year?
Can you repeat the year again?
Yep, 1998-99, former Habs and Leaf Thomas Kaberle finished 15th in Calder voting. Who won the Calder Trophy that year? Put your answer in the comments. Email it to us, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Let us know. Tell us how smart you are, and we'll tell the world how smart you are.
I think I might know this answer, but I am going to save it so that you guys can guess. And we want to thank you all for listening. Remember, we are 5 days a week. So Ian will be back on Monday. I'm going on vacation. So Ian will be back on Monday with lots of fun stuff, cool guests, the segments you love, maybe some new ones, lots of talk next week. So make sure you are subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. You won't miss a single episode. Tell your friends, please subscribe, please rate us. If you want to see more, tell us what you want to see more of. We love hearing from you. You can find us all over social media. On Twitter, we're at LO_Canadiens. On Instagram, we're at Locked On Canadiens. You can email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. We also have a lot of your trivia questions that we will be bringing into the show as well. We thank you so much. You can find my co-host, maybe it's Ian. You'll find me at The Active Stick. Thank you so much for listening. Ian, we'll see you on Monday.